What's going on, guys? Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe. Now, we're going to be talking about two of the possible only ETFs that you would ever need, right? So, the first one on the list, and I want to go with some growth. I want to go with some safe growth, right? And so I'll also give you alternates to this first one I'm going to give you as well. So, number one is going to be SPLG. Okay, now SPLG is an ETF that tracks the S&P 500. Now with SPLG, you're going to be looking at one of the cheaper ETFs that tracks the S&P 500. It comes with a 1.28% dividend yield, but they got a cheap expense ratio of 0.02%. Now, this expense ratio basically is a fee that you pay the portfolio managers. That's all it means. That means that they're doing the work for you. All you have to do is have the capital. You don't have to do any of the research as far as managing the fund. And so you just put your capital in. It's going to track the S&P 500. You're going to get a dividend, and you'll like it. Okay. Now, staying in the same bracket before we move to the next bracket, another one that tracks the S&P 500 is you're looking at VOO. Okay, so this is another growth ETF that tracks the S&P 500. Now with VOO, which is hosted by Vanguard, right? So you're going to get a 1.28% just like you would on SPLG. And you have an expense ratio of 0.03%, which, as you can see, you'd get a little bit more with SPLG, but it's all about what you're comfortable with, okay? So you can't go wrong with either one. The only difference is that 0.01% of an expense ratio. Now, staying in the same bracket, this is the last one before we move on to the next ETF. The last one that tracks the S&P 500, it's been around for longer than the other two, but you're going to have a higher expense ratio. And this one is called the SPY. So SPY is the ticker symbol. Now, SPY is also known for people that like to trade the S&P 500 daily. Maybe you swing trade, day trade, whatever it is you can do. You can do with the SPY. Not to say you can't with the others, but with the SPY, the reason why I like it, although the dividend yield is cheaper, is 1.23%, and the expense ratio is 0.09%, which is higher than the previous two. But the thing I like about the SPY is it has a lot of activity. So if I had, let's say, 50,000 shares of S&P, SPY. If I had 50,000 shares, it would be easy for me to get rid of them pretty much in a day if I wanted to, without having to keep coming down in price. So that's one of the perks that I like about S&P SPY, is that if there's an emergency situation and you got to get rid of all of them quickly, you can do that while still maintaining a high value on your capital that you have in the ETF. Okay, now we're gonna move to the next section, right? So that first category, I gave you three. All right, so you could pick and do your research on those, but the next is going to be not necessarily high growth like the S&P 500, but we're going to go with a high dividend yield. Okay, now the next one is SCHD. Okay, so SCHD is one of the most popular high dividend ETFs out there. They've recently readjusted their portfolio just in case the markets drop. And the thing that I like about them is you're getting a nearly 4% dividend yield, but you have that aspect of growth as well. So if you look on the graphs, right, you'll see that the SCHD has gone up like 43% over the last 5 years. That's really good for a high dividend yield ETF. Okay, so SCHD, SPLG. SPLG is a high growth that tracks the S&P 500, and then you have SCHD, which is a high dividend yield ETF. Now, another alternate that you can look into would be Spider's S&P 500 low volatility high yield. Is called SPHD. Okay, so SPHD can be an alternate to SCHD. So go ahead and do your research. All right. Now, to conclude this video, you need a nice high growth ETF, SPLG, and then a high dividend yield, SCHD. Now, for me, I probably would do 60 to 65% of my portfolio with the ETF that tracks the S&P 500, and I would do maybe 35 to 40% that would track a high dividend yield ETF. So that way, when I want to retire, my portfolio is growing two different ways, right? So I'm accumulating more shares with SCHD, which is that high dividend yield. I've got to automatically investing right back into the ETF. And then as I get older, I can use those dividends and pay myself as income. SPLG, you can reinvest as well. And then you'll obtain more and more shares as well. But for me, it's all about the growth aspect to SPLG. All right. Well, that's what I got for you guys. Hopefully this new scenery does something for you. I'm just maybe 10 minutes away from my house. I took a little walk after eating dinner. Had a tough work week. Lost one of my cousins late last week, so getting prepared to go to Detroit. So that's kind of why I've been not posting so much. It's a lot going on. In addition to that, I've been in IT, guys, for about 16 years. In the last couple of years, you know, I have my little bitty kids with me while I'm trying to work. So my days are always crazy. All right. Listen, guys, I appreciate you guys. Make sure you guys like, share, and subscribe. And we're out, guys. Peace.